Hello everyone, this is going to be a short sort of summation of what I'm expecting from GEA number 2, which is your interview with the stakeholder assignment. Now I know a few of you actually have already conducted your interviews after submitting GEA number 1, and that's totally fine. But for those that are still sort of thinking about what should I do, and even for those that already completed your interviews, this is going to show you what I'm looking for in terms of this assignment. This assignment is going to have two parts. The first is you are going to submit basically a short essay, sort of summarizing your interview to me as an individual paper. Then additionally, you will provide a summary of your findings and your perspective on the interview process with your classmates on the discussion forum in Canvas as well. A part of that, you will also read at least one other person's response and give them detailed feedback or commentary, sort of like you're doing for the reflection papers throughout the semester. Just sort of looking at what they talked about and what's your perspective on that, I guess is what you say I'm primarily looking for. As I mentioned, there are a few modifications to GEA number 2 that had to be conducted because of, well, COVID. That being said, you can interview anyone that you like, essentially. So for instance, this could be a stakeholder on a certain topic of interest to you, or a community member, let's say in Tampa Bay. It could be another instructor, not myself, of course, a graduate student, a undergraduate student, family member, or friend. Basically what I'm looking for is that you just interview somebody, preferably an adult, but also I know a lot of individuals are living with their families, so if you have a teenage student, let's say in high school, that you'd like to talk to, feel free to do so. Again, I want to stress that I want this to be socially distant, so let's say you're doing this in person, which I'm advising against. Please make sure that you're being cautious, you're wearing a mask, you're sitting adequately apart from each other. Basically what I'm trying to say is try to do this either via the phone or some digital method such as Teams or Zoom as an example. After you conduct your interviews, you are going to submit your findings to me, as I talked about on the previous slide. And additionally, you're going to be submitting a summary of those findings and your perspectives on the forum post that other people can see as well. In terms of your expectations of the individual portion of this assignment, the paper, we're calling this a field report, and a field report basically is an executive summary that sort of summarizes the key takeaways, the context of who you interviewed and what they were talking about. So think about these 5 bullets as essentially the rubric that I'm going to be using to evaluate your report. So first, you're going to briefly describe who you interviewed and also the setting of the interview. To give an example, if you interviewed your cousin Dave over the phone on a Tuesday, embellish that and paint me a picture of the context of the interview. Why did you reach out to this person, as an example, is a good question to ask when I'm reading your papers. Why did he talk to his cousin Dave, basically? This is an important skill to develop in anthropological writing because oftentimes the very beginning piece of the paper is the thing that draws you in or turns you away from a document. You've probably read an article that probably forced you into class that started off very dryly, and that is actually going to influence and color your perception of the rest of the article. Oh boy, this is going to be a slog to get through. Anthropological writing does not need to be boring to read, and that's been a growing movement in the discipline overall. So think about it almost as if you're a reporter. You are painting a picture for me as the reader and enticing me to say, okay, this is really interesting that they talked to their cousin Dave, and you're probably going to have some good insights on X topic, as an example. Then you're going to state the issues or issue that was addressed in the interview. So for instance, if you engaged with racism in the United States or sexism in the US, make that explicit so I know basically what the sort of key takeaways are going to be from this interview. So what did you focus on, and what was Dave having to sort of think about when he was framing his questions to you, or his answers to you? Then you're going to give me basically the point of view of the individual about the issues that were discussed. basically, well, what did they say? I'm not looking for bullets here. I want this to be descriptive, and I want you to sort of weave the question, answer, responses together. You can do it as a formal script of, let's say, author Dave, but this is something that you often don't see in a lot of, let's say, anthropological articles. You see a more synthesis of the answers and responses and a so-called more traditional paragraph as an example. If you want some help on that, feel free to reach out to me, but also look towards readings that we've had in this class or outside of the class and see how other scholars sort of engaged with qualitative interview data and wove it into their analysis and their report, basically. Then, either from the interviewee themselves or yourself, if they didn't engage with it, tell me what are some potential solutions that were either brought up or made you think about after conducting the interview about a certain topic. Let's say we're talking about racism in the US. Did Dave say anything about, let's say, supporting Black Lives Matter as a way to empower Black and other minority individuals? Is this something that's on your mind as an example of how to, let's say, empower minority perspectives? But also keep in mind that this class, at the end of the day, is about multiculturalism and diversity. So think of a potential solution, either from Dave or your own, that can build on that diversity and make it more integrated, make it more equitable in the larger US. And again, if you have any questions concerning that, please feel free to reach out to me. But basically what I'm trying to do here is to get you to move on from the interview, because this is a skill to develop. Okay, I conducted the interview. Now, how can I use this data to do something? That basically is what I'm trying to get you all to get out of this class also too, is moving on analysis and into the realm of doing things and enacting on your perceived wants and needs or that of your community, as an example. And then finally, the more straightforward one and probably the more boring one for you all is I want this field report to be written in a clear style that can be easily understood by a so-called lay audience. And a lay audience basically is just the average individual reading a report. Could someone on the street that you hand this to be able to read this and understand what you were saying? This is actually pretty difficult, especially for those that are used to anthropological writing, because we write at a higher level than the average individual would feel comfortable reading. So I want you to this is not dumbing it down, it's just making it more clear. And you will find that if you are a writer that writes at a very high level, including myself, I've often been critiqued for doing this, it's a difficult skill to sort of walk back and say, okay, does this make sense, or would this make sense? Is this clearly written? And that's basically it. Of course, I'm looking for grammar and syntax as well, so make sure that you proofread thoroughly your documents, and that's your report. It's only 500 words, so I think it's pretty manageable. You're probably like, this probably could have been a paper instead of me doing a presentation, so I'll wrap this up really quickly. In addition to your individual paper, you also are going to post on the GEA forum discussion, which you will find at near the bottom of your Canvas modules page. So what I'm looking for basically is a distillation, even of the distillation of your field report. You're going to give me a short summary of only 2 to 4 paragraphs, which generally means 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph, of the key points you learned from your interview process on race or a related issue in America. And as we talked about in this class, really everything is interrelated in some capacity. Climate change relates to racism and climate advocacy as an example, and environmental justice as well. Food insecurity relates to race, it relates to gender, it relates to basically everything we talked about in the semester too, including COVID as an example. So in the more specific guidelines of what I'm looking for, in a non-specific assignment really, you're going to explain who you interviewed, like you're doing for the paper, and then a few highlights from the interview, some key findings that you may have found from the person's experience on a certain topic or their opinion on a certain topic, related to, again, that issue that basically most likely is the focus of your interview. And again, that could be multiple issues. If you're talking about sexism and racism, engage with both. How did the interview respond to those topics? Do you think that what they said could be expanded, as another example? And then I'm going to also require that you respond to at least one other student in, at a minimum, one paragraph. Basically, you're going to be examining what they talked about, building upon it, providing either a critique or insights that you think build on what they're talking about, similar to what we've been doing throughout the semester, again, with the reflection papers. I want to see how you all interpret the material that other students produce as well. Remember to be respectful, of course, and keep in mind that everyone has a very different opinion on a lot of different topics, and even the same topic for that matter too. So basically, a few paragraphs summarizing your interview, and then at least one paragraph reflecting on the interview process and their write-up of someone else too. And that's basically it. All right, and as promised on the title slide of this presentation, if you didn't see that, I am providing an additional extra credit opportunity in this class. It'll be 2 points for your average. So for instance, if you have an 89 average at the end of the semester, you'll have a 91. And it's pretty simple. What I'm going to ask for you to do is to watch the following anthropology webinar. The American Anthropological Association, or AAA, has been producing a lot of webinars, especially of late because of COVID. But I would like you to watch this one in particular on the anthropology of policing, the persistence of racialized police brutality and community responses, because it engages with a lot of different topics that we talked about throughout the semester. And of course, I think it is of extreme relevance, especially given the current contexts and relevance of today. So watch the documentary, take notes, and then email me a short, 2-paragraph summary on your key takeaways from the webinar, something that surprised you, and what you can do to potentially address racism as a college student in the US. This can be about locally in Tampa or more broadly as well. Basically, what can you do? And also I'm looking for why is this important also too. This will be due on the last day of November, so 11/30/2020. And I hope a few of you use this opportunity not just to up your average, which is also very important near the end of the semester, but also to dig deeper into a very important topic that relates to many different things talked about throughout the semester, and also, of course, daily life, being a member of the US population too. So thank you, and since there is not going to be a formal lecture this week, please use this time to work on either other classes. I'm sure you have a bunch of deadlines that are all starting to crash on top of each other right now, but also my own, because you know, if you check the syllabus and also the modules, you have a few assignments all starting to rapidly approach towards the end of this semester. That includes your GEA number 2 write-up and also summary to other students. That includes your reflexivity paper or your reflection paper. In addition to that, I'm looking for your intervention paper as well. So it's a lot of papers, and don't wait until the last minute to start to complete these, because they have very rapid sequential deadlines given the time constraints nearing the end of this semester. So if you can fit in this webinar, which is roughly an hour 30 if you don't count the Q&A at the very end, I think this is manageable. But again, any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. And as a reminder, I will be having sort of informal office hours on Monday and Wednesday of this week from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. via Microsoft Teams. You should have already gotten an invitation via email for these. If not, my announcement on Canvas also provides you a link that will allow you to access the meeting as well. I hope you are doing well, and talk to you soon, hopefully.